The first thing I noticed wasn't the crown. It was the sound. A thin, almost delicate fracture echoed through the grand hall. Not loud, not dramatic, but wrong. I turned my head just enough to catch it. One of the ancient glass pillars lining the Athenaeum had cracked. Not shattered, just a single, spreading line, like something deep inside it had finally given up. In 11 months on Virion Prime, I had learned one thing very clearly. Those pillars did not crack. They were older than most dynasties, reinforced with technologies no one talked about anymore. If one of them failed, it meant something had gone very, very wrong. Then the crown hit the floor. The sound that followed was louder, sharper, final. It rang across the chamber like a verdict. I snapped my attention forward just in time to see High Empress Erolyn Vasera standing at the edge of her dais, her hand still slightly raised from the motion of throwing it. No one moved. 70 noble houses, each more powerful than anything humanity had ever produced, sat frozen in place. Because this wasn't anger. This wasn't politics. This was collapse. Her skin, usually a calm, deep violet, had darkened almost to black, her breathing slow but heavy, like she had been holding something in for far too long. I had watched her for months, in negotiations, in council sessions, in silence. I had never seen her like this. "I am done," she said. Not shouted, not declared, just finished. The crack in the pillar crept a little further. And in that moment, I realized something no one else in that room seemed willing to admit. The empire wasn't breaking. It had already broken, and we were just now hearing the sound. The crown didn't shatter. It rolled, a soft metallic whisper against polished stone, completely out of place in a room where every movement was usually deliberate, measured, rehearsed. I followed it without thinking, my eyes tracking its slow, almost lazy path across the marble floor. No one stopped it. No one moved at all. 72 houses, and not a single one dared to break formation. It spun once, twice, and then it touched my boot. That was the moment everything became real. I stared down at it, at the crown of Virion. White metal, impossibly thin, woven with living crystal that pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. I had seen it 100 times from a distance. Never like this. Never within reach. "Do not move." Ambassador Kell's voice cut through the silence behind me, sharp and low. "Step back, Mercer. Now." I didn't. My body knew the command. Every instinct I had as a soldier, every protocol drilled into me since I arrived on this planet screamed the same thing. Do nothing. Survive. Stay invisible. That's what I'd been doing for 11 months. Invisible. I was the human liaison. A title that sounded important until you realized it meant translating poetry between people who didn't want you there in the first place. The Caliph didn't do small talk. They communicated in layers, in implication, in centuries of shared meaning I wasn't supposed to understand. Most days, I was furniture. Other days, I was a mistake they tolerated. Humanity, as far as they were concerned, was irrelevant. Too young, too small. We had no territory worth contesting, no technology worth stealing, no culture they couldn't replicate in a week if they cared enough. We didn't matter. But I had watched. I had watched Empress Erolyn sit through 16-hour sessions without shifting once, while half the room quietly worked against her. I had watched her negotiate treaties that saved entire systems, only to have the credit redistributed before the ink dried. I had watched her kneel, actually kneel, in a lower sector infirmary beside a dying child, holding his hand while the noble houses pretended not to notice. They called that weakness. I called it strength. And now she stood there, at the center of it all, empty. The crack in the pillar spread another inch. "Corporal," Kell again, tighter this time. "If you value your position, your life, you will not touch that crown." Position? That almost made me laugh. I didn't have a position. I had a seat at the edge of a room where decisions were made without me. I didn't belong here. But she did. And she was walking away from it. "I am finished," Erolyn said again, quieter now, like she was saying it to herself. Behind her, Lord Varric of House Telmar rose slowly, his robes shifting like liquid shadow. "A regrettable outburst," he said smoothly. "Understandable, given the strain. Perhaps Her Majesty requires." "Do not." Her voice cut him off mid-sentence. Cold, precise, final. He didn't sit. He didn't need to. His eyes dropped to the crown at my feet, and I saw it then. Not concern, not shock. Opportunity. The right of abdication, he continued, as if she hadn't spoken, requires formal reception of the crown. Until it is claimed, the declaration remains incomplete. A trap. I didn't know all their laws, but I knew enough. If she picked it up herself, she would look weak, indecisive. If one of them picked it up, they became her replacement. And if no one did, the empire would tear itself apart, deciding who should. My gaze shifted back to her. She wasn't looking at the crown. She wasn't looking at anything. Just gone. Still standing, still breathing, but gone. The crack in the pillar stopped spreading, like it was waiting. I don't remember deciding to move. 1 second I was standing there, frozen like everyone else. The next, I bent down. The moment my fingers touched the crown, the entire chamber inhaled. Not a gasp. Something deeper. 72 houses witnessing something that was not supposed to exist. Human hands. On their crown. It was warm. That surprised me. I expected it to be cold, ceremonial, lifeless. Instead, it pulsed faintly against my palms, like it recognized something. Or maybe it didn't recognize anything at all, and that was the problem. Mercer. Kel started. Too late. I straightened. The weight of the crown settling into my hands, lighter than it had any right to be. Every eye in the room was on me now. For the first time since I arrived on this planet, I wasn't invisible. I took the first step toward the dais, and everything changed. If you've watched this far, then this story is really interesting to you. Please confirm it by clicking like under this video. It doesn't cost you anything, but it will help me understand what story to publish for you next. Let's move on. By the time I reached the base of the dais, the silence had weight. Not the quiet of discipline, not the quiet of respect. This was something else. This was the kind of silence that forms when people are watching something they don't yet understand and are afraid they might. 17 steps separated me from her. I counted them without meaning to. 1, 2. No one tried to stop me. That was the first sign something had gone wrong in a way none of them had planned for. 3, 4. Behind me, I could feel the shift. The nobles weren't frozen anymore. They were thinking, recalculating, adjusting narratives that hadn't existed 10 seconds ago. 5, 6. Lord Varric spoke first. Stop. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Authority was something his kind wore like a second skin. That crown does not belong to you, human. I didn't answer. 7, 8. It belongs, he continued, sharper now, to the sovereignty, to bloodlines you cannot comprehend, to a history you have no place in. 9, 10. I kept walking, because for the first time since I'd arrived here, I understood something clearly. They weren't angry because I broke a rule. They were angry because I broke a pattern. 11, 12. Seize him. That came from somewhere to my left. Another house, another voice trying to reassert control over something that had slipped out of their hands. No one moved. Not a guard. Not a noble. That was the second sign. 13, 14. I reached the final step and stopped just below her. Close enough now to see the details no one else could. The faint tremor in her hands. The way her breathing wasn't steady, no matter how hard she tried to make it look like it was. The way her eyes, silver white, usually sharp, always focused, weren't fixed on the room anymore. They were fixed on something far away, like she had already left. What are you doing? Her voice was quiet, not imperial, not commanding, just tired. I looked up at her. For 11 months, I had watched her from the edges of rooms like this, trying to understand a system that was never meant to include me. Now I was standing in the center of it. I'm correcting a mistake, I said. It wasn't planned. It just came out. Something flickered in her eyes. Not anger. Not yet. Confusion. Leave it, she said. This does not concern you. It didn't. She was right. None of this did. I was a human liaison with no authority, no standing, no future in this place. This wasn't my empire. This wasn't my fight. But I had spent 11 months watching people with power do nothing, and I wasn't going to be one of them. It does now, I said. Behind me, the room finally broke. Voices. Low at first, then louder. Unacceptable. Contamination. This is a violation. The word spread faster than anything else. Contamination. I almost smiled, because that's what I was to them. Not a person, a risk, a variable, a problem. And now I was holding their most sacred symbol. I raised the crown. For a fraction of a second, my hands hesitated. Not because I was unsure, because I realized there was no version of this where I walked away clean. This was it, the point where everything changed. Then I placed it on her head, Carefully, precisely, like it had always belonged there. Her breath caught, just slightly, but I felt it. Up close, you notice things like that. Her eyes snapped back into focus, locking onto mine. For the first time since I'd met her, she was fully present. She started, and stopped, because she didn't know what I was. Neither did I. The room exploded. Sacrilege. Varric again, this time louder, his control slipping just enough to show what was underneath. A human has defiled the crown of Virion. No, another voice cut in. Calm, measured, dangerous in a completely different way. Lady Saran of House Valeries stepped forward, her gaze moving between me and the Empress with unsettling precision. That is not what occurred. Varric turned on her. He touched it. He returned it. Silence again. Different this time. Sharper. More focused. There is no precedent for this, she continued. In over 12,000 years, no one has ever taken the crown and given it back. That was the third sign. Not that I had done something wrong, but that I had done something they didn't know how to process. I stepped back, slowly, carefully, not turning my back on her. Not yet. Her hand moved. Fast. Not enough to stop me. Just enough to catch my wrist. Light pressure, but it held. I looked down at her hand, then back at her face. Up close, I could see it clearly now. Not anger, not weakness. Something else. Something breaking through the exhaustion. What have you done? She whispered. I didn't answer right away. Because the truth wasn't simple. It wasn't one reason. It was 11 months of watching. Of understanding. Of waiting. Someone had to, I said quietly. Her grip tightened. Just for a second. Then she let go. I stepped back down the stairs. 1, 2, 3. This time, the room didn't stop me. It parted. Not physically, but something had shifted. They were looking at me differently now. Not like furniture. Not like an insect. Like a problem. Like a threat. Like something that shouldn't exist. By the time I reached my position beside Ambassador Kell, my hands had started shaking. I kept them still. Barely. You have just ended your career, he said under his breath. I nodded. Probably. He exhaled slowly, and possibly started something much worse. I looked back toward the dais. The Empress stood still. Her hand had risen to the crown, not removing it, just holding it there, like she was feeling its weight for the first time. Yeah, I said. Probably that too. By morning, I wasn't a person anymore. I was a topic, the fastest spreading one on Virion Prime. Every corridor conversation stopped when I walked past. Every screen in the diplomatic quarter looped the same footage. Angles from the chamber, slowed down, enhanced, dissected. My hands lifting the crown. My steps up the dais. The moment it touched her head, they'd already named it. Contamination. Ambassador Kell didn't bother pretending things were normal. Sit, he said the second I stepped into his office. I sat. He looked worse than I'd ever seen him. Eyes red, posture rigid, jaw locked like he was holding something in place by force. I have received 19 formal complaints, he said. 4 demands for your immediate expulsion, 2 for detention, 1 for execution. He paused. And 1 request. I didn't need to ask. The Empress, he confirmed. Private audience. Imperial Gardens. Noon. I leaned back slightly. Of course she did. Kell's eyes narrowed. Do you understand what this means? Yeah, I said. It means I'm either about to be rewarded or used. Or both, he said flatly. You are, diplomatically speaking, nothing. For her to request you personally, this shifts the entire balance of perception. You are now tied to her. Publicly. I nodded. I figured. Good, he said. Then here's what you're going to do. You will go. You will say as little as possible. You will not touch anything. And for the love of everything, Mercer, do not improvise. I almost smiled. I'll try. You won't, he said. But try anyway. The Imperial Gardens didn't feel real. Not in the way the rest of the palace did. The Athenaeum was built for power. Everything in it was sharp, deliberate, controlled. The gardens weren't. They were alive. The air itself felt different, thick with scent and movement, layered with things I didn't have names for. Trees from 100 worlds grew in careful chaos, their leaves shifting color as the light from Virion's twin suns filtered through the glass ceiling above. Gold and violet light. It made everything look unreal. She was standing by one of the pools when I arrived. No crown. That was the first thing I noticed. Her hair fell freely over her shoulders, dark and intricate, without the rigid structure she wore in the chamber. Without the ceremonial armor of her position, she looked smaller. Not weaker, just human, in a way she wasn't supposed to be. Corporal Mercer. Her voice had changed. Not softer, just less distant. Your Majesty. Walk. I fell into step beside her. We didn't speak. Not at first. And I knew enough about their culture to understand that silence wasn't empty here. It was intentional, measured, sometimes even necessary. So I waited. We passed beneath a tree with translucent leaves that refracted the light into shifting patterns across the path. The water beside us moved slowly, reflecting fragments of both suns. Then, you study our language, she said. Not a question. I do. Why? I thought about it for a second. Because the easy answer wouldn't work here. Because you have 47 words for different types of silence, I said, and only 3 for happiness. That got a reaction, not a smile, but something close. A slight shift in her expression, like tension releasing just enough to notice. Most outsiders find our culture rigid, she said. Most outsiders don't stay long enough to understand it. She glanced at me. You have. I've tried. We walked a few more steps. Then she stopped, turned, faced me fully. You have been observed, she said. I didn't react. Not outwardly. Everyone is, she continued. It is necessary. But most people are predictable. Her eyes locked onto mine. You are not. There it was. The real reason I was here. Why did you do it, she asked. No titles. No distance. Just the question. The honest answer wasn't simple. It wasn't clean. It wasn't diplomatic. It was a collection of things I hadn't planned to say out loud. I watched you, I said. Her expression didn't change. I watched you hold that room together for 11 months while half of it worked against you. I watched you negotiate agreements that kept systems from collapsing while your own people questioned your authority. I took a breath. I watched you kneel in a lower sector infirmary and hold a dying child's hand, while every noble in that chamber pretended it didn't matter. Her eyes shifted, just slightly. And then yesterday, I continued, I watched 72 houses sit there and do nothing while you broke. Silence. A different kind this time. He was right. I added, quieter. About one thing. Her gaze sharpened. Which thing? That the crown matters. I paused. Just not more than the person wearing it. Something in her face changed. Not visibly. Not in a way anyone else would have caught. But I did. Because I had spent 11 months watching her hide everything. And for a fraction of a second, she didn't. And the pillar? She asked suddenly. That caught me off guard. The pillar. The crack, she said. You noticed it. Of course she had. I did. When did it appear? I thought back. The sound. The timing. Right before you threw the crown, I said. Her gaze didn't leave mine. Not before, she corrected quietly. During. I frowned slightly. That's not possible. No, she said. It isn't. We stood there for a moment, the weight of that settling between us. Because if the pillar hadn't cracked before, and it hadn't cracked after, then it had broken at the exact moment she let go, as if something in the structure of the empire had mirrored her. You understand what you have done? She said finally. It wasn't a question. Yeah, I said. You have made my position more difficult. I know. You have given my enemies a weapon. I know. Her voice sharpened. Then why? Because the alternative was worse. That stopped her. They would have torn everything apart, I said. You know that. Silence again. Longer this time. Heavier. Then, you should leave, she said. I blinked. What? Virion Prime, she clarified. Return to your world. Remove yourself from this. Is that an order? Her eyes held mine. For a second, something unspoken passed between us. Then, it is a request. I considered it. For about half a second. Then I declined. Something happened at the corner of her mouth. Not a smile, but close. You are frustrating, she said. I've been told. She turned slightly, looking back toward the path. Return to your embassy, she said. Events are already in motion. You will be contacted. I nodded, started to turn. Mercer. I stopped. Looked back. Her gaze softened. Just enough. Thank you, she said. Not for the act. Not for the politics. For something else. Yeah, I said quietly. Don't mention it. And as I walked away through the gardens, I couldn't stop thinking about the pillar. About the timing. About the way it had cracked exactly when she broke. Because structures like that didn't fail randomly. Not here. Not in an empire that controlled everything down to the smallest detail. Which meant one of two things. Either something impossible had just happened, or someone had made it happen. The summons came 2 days later. Not quietly, not discreetly, public, formal, deliberate. The tribunal of dissolution had been invoked. I was in the embassy corridor when the notice hit every screen at once, a sharp pulse of light, followed by the imperial seal fracturing into the symbol of emergency assembly. People stopped mid-step. Conversations died instantly. Even the background systems seemed to dim, as if the building itself understood what this meant. I didn't need to read the full text. I already knew. They were coming for her. Ambassador Kell found me before I could move. Inside. Now. His office door sealed the moment I stepped through. They're not wasting time, he said, pacing. Varric's coalition moved faster than expected. He's framing the entire incident as sovereign contamination, ritual violation, cultural defilement. I leaned against the wall. Yeah, that tracks. He stopped pacing and looked at me. This isn't rhetoric, Mercer. If the tribunal rules against her, she's finished. Removed. Exiled at best. And at worst. He didn't answer immediately. Then, you've read their history. I had. That was enough. Silence stretched between us. Then he exhaled. They're using the pillar. That made me straighten. What? The crack, he said. They're calling it a sign. Structural instability mirroring political instability. They're tying it directly to her rule. Saying the empire itself is rejecting her. I almost laughed. Convenient. Effective, he corrected. Symbols matter here. You know that. I did. More than I wanted to. What's her position? I asked. In seclusion, he said. Preparing her defense. No public appearances. No statements. I nodded slowly. That's not going to be enough. No, he said. It won't. Silence again. Then, what are you thinking? I didn't answer right away. Because I already knew what I was thinking. And I knew he wasn't going to like it. There's a law, I said finally. Kell's expression tightened. No, I hadn't even said it yet. You don't know what I'm going to say. I do, he said flatly. And the answer is no. I pushed off the wall. It's valid. It's suicide. Same thing, depending on how you look at it. Ryan. He only used my first name when things were serious. This qualified. You don't understand what you're stepping into, he said. This isn't your system. These aren't your rules. I've spent 11 months learning their rules. Not this one. He was right. I hadn't learned this one from observation. I'd learned it from poetry. From the old texts they didn't expect anyone like me to read. Transfer of burden, I said. Ancient statute. Predates half their current legal framework. Kell closed his eyes for a second. Don't. If I invoke it, don't finish that sentence. They have to accept it. He slammed his hand on the desk. For once in your life, Mercer, I am ordering you to think about yourself. I went quiet. Because that wasn't a bad point. It just wasn't the right one. This isn't about me, I said. It is when you're the one standing in the execution circle. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time since I'd known him, I saw something past the diplomat. Fear. Not for the mission. For me. She loses, I said slowly. This place fractures. You know that. He didn't answer. Because he did. They're already divided, I continued. Outer systems are unstable. Trade routes are stretched. If Varric takes control, he doesn't stabilize anything. He consolidates power. And that's not our problem. It becomes our problem the second it turns into a war. That landed. I could see it. He hated that I was right. I gave them the excuse, I added. This started because of me. No, he said immediately. It started long before you touched that crown. Maybe, I said. But I accelerated it. Silence. Heavy. Then. And her, he asked quietly. That was the real question. I didn't answer right away. Because saying it out loud made it real. I'm not going to stand there, I said finally, and watch them tear her apart. Kell studied me. Long carefully. Then he sighed. You're an idiot. I've been told. You're not even doing this for political reasons anymore. No, I said. I'm not. He leaned back in his chair. You understand what happens if you do this? Yeah. Say it. I met his eyes. If they rule against me, I said, I don't get exile. No. I don't get a second chance. No. I die. He held my gaze. Correct. Silence. Then, all right, he said quietly. That surprised me. You're not stopping me. No, he said. I'm acknowledging that I can't. He reached for his console. If you're going to do this, he continued, you're not walking in blind. I stepped forward slightly. What do you have? Nothing confirmed, he said. But something's wrong. With the pillar? He nodded. Structural analysis reports don't match the official narrative. The fracture pattern isn't consistent with internal stress failure. That made my chest tighten. What is it consistent with? He hesitated. Then, external interference. There it was. The second option. Not impossible. Not random. Engineered. Someone made it happen, I said. Maybe, he said. We don't have proof. Not yet. He looked at me. Ryan, if you're right. I know. This wasn't just about her anymore. Or me. This was bigger. Calculated. Planned. And I had just stepped directly into the center of it. Then find it, he said. Before the tribunal. I nodded. Yeah. I turned toward the door. Ryan. I stopped. If you go through with this. I glanced back. Don't hesitate, he said. I almost smiled. Wasn't planning to. And as I walked out of the office, one thought stayed with me. The pillar hadn't cracked because she broke. It had cracked because someone needed it to. And if I didn't prove that, the next thing to break would be me. The tribunal of dissolution did not feel like a courtroom. It felt like a countdown. The Athenaeum was full, not just the 72 houses, but observers, delegates, civilians who had petitioned for access. That alone told me how far this had spread. The Caliph didn't gather like this for curiosity. They gathered for history. And today, they expected to witness the fall of an empress, or the death of a human. I stood in the center of the chamber, inside a circle of pale stone that had been worn smooth by centuries of judgment. The execution circle, though no one called it that out loud. I wore my Earth uniform, not because it mattered here, because it mattered to me. If I was going to die, I wasn't doing it as a footnote in someone else's system. I was doing it as myself. The Empress sat above, on the imperial dais. Crown in place. Perfect posture. Perfect control. If you didn't know what to look for, you'd think nothing had changed. But I knew. I saw it in the stillness. In the way her hand rested just slightly too close to the crown, like she needed to remind herself it was still there. She hadn't looked at me since I entered. That was intentional. It had to be. Distance was part of the law now. And if there was one thing she still followed, it was the rules. Proceed. Lord Varric's voice carried through the chamber, smooth and confident. He stepped forward, robes flowing, presence controlled. He didn't rush. He didn't need to. He thought he'd already won. The facts are not in dispute, he began. A foreign entity, this human, made physical contact with the crown of sovereignty. Murmurs. Low. Controlled. Agreeing. He ascended the dais without authorization. He placed the crown upon the Empress without consent from the assembly. His gaze shifted to me. And in doing so, he violated 12,000 years of unbroken tradition. He turned slightly, addressing the chamber. This is not a matter of intent. It is a matter of consequence. The crown is not an object. It is a symbol of lineage, of continuity, of sacred order. He paused, and that order was broken. There it was. Clean. Precise. Effective. And the pillar? I said. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. The room shifted anyway. Varric's expression didn't change. That is irrelevant. It cracked at the exact moment she let go of the crown, I said. First time in 1,000 years. Coincidence, he replied. No, I said. Convenience. That got attention. Subtle, but real. You are not here to question structural anomalies, Varric said. You are here to answer for your actions. I am, I said. And I will. I took a breath. This was it. No going back. I formally invoke Velashir. The word hit the chamber like a physical force. Not loud, but heavy, ancient, binding. The reaction wasn't chaos. It was worse. Silence. The kind that comes when something old enough to be forgotten suddenly becomes real again. Varric didn't move, but I saw it. The flicker. He hadn't expected that. You cannot, someone started. I can't, I said calmly. The statute predates your contamination laws by 3,000 years. It supersedes them. I shifted, not to me, to each other, because they knew I was right. Varric recovered quickly. Even if accepted, he said, you understand the consequence? Yes. Then say it. I met his gaze. If I am found guilty, I said, the penalty transfers to me. And for a non-caliph, he pressed. Death. The word settled. Heavy. Real. No one spoke. Then, accepted. Lady Saran's voice. Clear. Unshakable. The invocation is valid. That sealed it. There was no stopping it now. Varric's jaw tightened, just slightly. Then he turned back to the chamber. Very well, he said. Then let us proceed properly. He gestured. The central display activated, and the footage appeared. The pillar zoomed, enhanced, frame by frame. Observe, Varric said. The fracture. The image slowed. The moment stretched. The crack forming, spreading. He let it play. Then, natural failure, he concluded. Symbolic of instability. Pause it. That was me. Varric didn't respond. Pause it, I repeated. Lady Saran glanced at him. He hesitated, then nodded. The image froze. I stepped forward, out of the circle. Technically not allowed. No one stopped me. Zoom here, I said. The display shifted. Closer, closer, until the fracture filled the screen. Again, I said. It replayed. Slower. This time, I pointed. There. A flicker. Tiny. Almost invisible. A distortion at the base of the pillar. Varric's expression hardened. Artifact, he said. No, I replied. Trigger. The room shifted again. You're looking at the result, I continued. Not the cause. I turned, addressing the chamber now. The fracture didn't start from internal stress. It started from a point of external interference. Murmurs. Sharper now. More focused. That's speculation, Varric said. No, I said. It's physics. I gestured to the display. The pillar didn't fail because the Empire is unstable. It failed because someone made it fail. That landed. Harder this time. Because now, there was a target. Why, someone asked. Timing, I said. I looked up at the dais. At her. She was watching now. Fully. Present. They needed a symbol, I continued. Something visible. Something undeniable. Something that would turn doubt into certainty. I turned back to Varric. Something that would make her look like the cause of the collapse. Silence. Then, you're accusing the assembly? Varric said. No, I replied. I'm accusing a faction. That was the moment everything shifted. Because now it wasn't about me. Or her. It was about them. The crack wasn't coincidence, I said. It was strategy. I let that sit. Then, and you're not afraid of contamination, I added quietly. You're afraid of losing control. The room didn't explode. It tightened, like something coiled had just been pulled too far. Varric didn't respond. Not immediately, because for the first time since this started, he didn't have control of the narrative. And he knew it. I stepped back into the circle, looked around. 72 houses. All watching, all thinking. You want to judge me? I said. Fine. I lifted my hand slightly. These are human hands. No lineage. No claim. No right to your history. I paused. But when your Empress was breaking, I let my gaze move across the chamber. What did you do? No answer. You watched. I looked back at Varric. I didn't take the crown. I said it clearly. Deliberately. I gave it back. Silence. Deep. Heavy. Different. Not fear. Not confusion. Something else. Something new. The vote was called. One by one. Voices. Measured. Precise. Guilty. 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 Varric's side held strong. At first. Then. Innocent. One voice. Then another. Then. A shift. Subtle. But unstoppable. The tide turned. And by the time the final count was spoken, it was over. I didn't die. And for the first time since I stepped into that circle, I breathed. I was still standing in the circle when she moved. Not slowly. Not ceremonially. Directly. The Empress descended the dais in full view of the 72 houses, the crown steady on her head, her gaze locked on me like nothing else in that chamber existed. Ryan Mercer, she said. No title. No distance. By authority of the throne, you are acquitted. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Then she stepped closer. Too close. Gasps rippled through the chamber. You no longer serve as liaison, she continued, her voice steady, but something warmer beneath it. That position is dissolved. I frowned slightly. Then what exactly do I? You serve me now. Silence. Heavy. Absolute. As Imperial Advisor, she added. Directly. That wasn't protocol. That wasn't anything they had rules for. She reached up, removing a small crystal from her collar. Not the crown, something older. Personal. She pressed it into my hand. Proof, she said quietly, that some fractures are not the end. Then, she took my hand. In front of everyone. The chamber didn't react. It froze. Because this This had never happened. "Walk with me," she said. And I did. We passed beneath the cracked pillar as we left, the fracture now catching the light instead of breaking it. Not a sign of collapse. A reminder that something had broken and survived. And as the doors closed behind us, I realized the empire hadn't ended. It had just changed. Thank you for listening to this story to the end. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Write in the comments what moment in this story impressed you the most. And also check out the other videos that just appeared on your screen. See you in the next video.